Trump just committed an act of war and a crime of aggression. Right? That's what you have many saying after he ordered a blockade on sanctioned oil tankers going in and out of Venezuela. With him writing on Truth Social last night, Venezuela is completely surrounded by the largest armada ever assembled in the history of South America. And adding, it will only get bigger, and the shock to them will be like nothing they have ever seen before until such time as they return to the United States of America all of the oil, land, and other assets that they previously stole from us. And saying the illegitimate Maduro regime is using oil from these stolen oil fields to finance themselves, drug terrorism, human trafficking, murder, and kidnapping, the Venezuelan regime has been designated a foreign terrorist organization. And then, after announcing that in no uncertain words he was ordering a total and complete blockade of all sanctioned oil tankers going into and out of Venezuela, Trump claimed the illegal aliens and criminals that the Maduro regime has sent into the United States during the weak and inept Biden administration are being returned to Venezuela at a rapid pace, saying America will not allow criminals, terrorists, or other countries to rob, threaten, or harm our nation, and likewise will not allow a hostile regime to take our oil, land, and any other assets, all of which must be returned to the United States immediately. So, a lot to unpack there. And so before we even get into what is actually true in what he said, let's start with the blockade and the responses to it. Because Trump's order, it could seriously hurt Venezuela's economy, which heavily relies on oil exports primarily to China. And so among the Venezuelan officials slamming this, you had the country's vice president saying, Venezuela in national unity condemns Donald Trump's military threat and will defend its rights of free trade, navigability, free development, sovereignty, and national independence. Right, and that is stateside, you had people like Representative Joaquin Castro writing, naval blockade is unquestionably an act of war, a war that the Congress never authorized and the American people do not want. And adding, on Thursday, the House will vote on a resolution directing the president to end hostilities with Venezuela. Every member of the House of Representatives will have the opportunity to decide if they support sending Americans into yet another regime change war. Also with this, I'll say Trump's choice to label Maduro's government as a foreign terrorist organization, that has sparked a lot of reactions, including confusion. And that's for a number of reasons, including he already gave that designation to Cartel de los Soles, with Trump arguing that it's headed by Maduro and people in his government. So to many, it was unclear if he was just referencing that or if he was declaring a new terrorist group. But as some reports have explained, giving that label to the government specifically, it would create more of a pretext for direct military action in the country and pave a way for U.S. personnel to sanction, stop, or seize any vessel carrying Venezuelan oil. Which then, on the note of oil, you have tons of people questioning Trump's claims that Venezuela stole U.S. oil, land, and assets. And there, you have many saying that's just an outright lie, though others have said it is an incorrect assertion. But where the reports largely agree is that Trump seems to be referencing Venezuela's choice to nationalize its oil industry a few decades ago. And a number of experts have argued that Venezuela's natural resources do not belong to the US. But still, you have people in Trump's administration like Stephen Miller using this justification, writing, American sweat, ingenuity, and toil created the oil industry in Venezuela. Its tyrannical expropriation was the largest recorded theft of American wealth and property. These pillaged assets were then used to fund terrorism and flood our streets with killers, mercenaries, and drugs. Also, with everything going on, there's a question of how does this impact the American oil companies still in Venezuela? And well, if you look into it, the only one left is Chevron, and it's the only one continuing to operate after decades of changes, and they have a special license from the government to operate there. And Chevron, at least so far, is suggesting that they're not impacted by Trump's order, with a spokesperson saying, Chevron's operations in Venezuela continue without disruption and in full compliance with the laws and regulations applicable to its business, as well as the sanctions frameworks provided by the US government. And really, they seem to be trying to stay out of this, saying any questions about the security situation in Venezuela should be directed to the appropriate authorities in the US government. So definitely what happens between Venezuela and Chevron is something we're gonna have to keep eyes on. But all of this, it comes as Trump's been spending months and months building pressure against Maduro. You have Trump threatening strikes in Venezuela. The military has conducted multiple airstrikes on boats in the Caribbean, often near Venezuela, and those have killed nearly 100 people, and many argue that those attacks have been illegal. There's also been an increase in US aircrafts in the region. And while the official on-paper motive from the administration is that this is a drug crackdown, many believe that, this is really just about regime change in Venezuela. Now, or maybe it's always been, apparently oil. It brings us back to just yesterday in that wild Vanity Fair piece with Trump's chief of staff, Susie Wiles, where she told them Trump wants to keep on blowing boats up until Maduro cries uncle. And so with that, you had senators like Chris Murphy seeing that quote and arguing, so not a war on the cartels, it's regime change. Either way, totally illegal and nonsensical. For now, we're gonna have to wait to see what happens and what Trump does from here. What do he call himself? The peace president? How disrespectful to FIFA. They made up a whole fucking peace prize for him, and this is what he does? It kept him busy for what, like an afternoon? Right, but then, next up from that today, right, because we have a lot to talk about, Trump, he just expanded the travel ban to nearly 40 countries, so about 1/5 of the entire planet, and this time, it's not just hitting tourists, it's hitting families, it's hitting students, it's hitting Afghans who helped the United States during the war, right? And these new restrictions are going into effect on January 1st, and they fully ban travel from 5 additional countries, including Syria and South Sudan, along with really anyone holding documents issued by the Palestinian Authority. And then on top top of that, there are 15 more countries, mostly in Africa, that are facing partial restrictions. But here's the part that matters the most. This policy applies to spouses, children, siblings, and parents of US citizens. It applies to international students, and it applies to Afghan special immigrant visa holders, so people who were explicitly promised protection for working with the US military and government. But the Trump administration, they say, hey, this is about security, saying it is the policy of the United States to protect its citizens from foreign nationals who intend to commit terrorist attacks, threaten national security, or exploit immigration laws. And yes, this was something that was expected. Right after 2 National Guard troops were shot and 1 was killed, the Trump administration immediately tightened immigration rules, and they pointed to the shooter's Afghan nationality as well as his expedited entry tied to work with CIA-backed units. But what followed also went far beyond that incident. In just days, Trump paused all asylum decisions, reviewed green cards from people from 19 Middle Eastern and African countries, indefinitely halted Afghan immigration applications, and barred Afghans from entering the US altogether. And all of this after Trump promised to, quote, permanently pause migration from all third world countries. And then you had Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem reportedly urging Trump to go even further, calling for, quote, a full travel ban on every damn country that's been flooding our nations with killers, leeches, and entitlement junkies. And so now with this move, you have supporters cheering, right? Gene Hamilton, the president of America First Legal, summing it up, saying if you don't know who someone is or if there are risks associated with their presence, you shouldn't let them in. But that is, you have many critics warning that the consequences, they're already showing. Right earlier this month, citizenship ceremonies were abruptly canceled, sparking panic among immigrants who had already cleared the system. And there's a part of this that no one really seems to be talking about. The US, we're set up to co-host the 2026 World Cup, and countries like Senegal, Haiti, and Iran are now on the restriction list. And while athletes, they may get exceptions, the fans, they likely won't. So essentially, you have the United States inviting the world and then telling large parts of it, hey, you're just not welcome. Right, and all of this is, you have former immigration officials saying, this isn't really about safety at all. And you had one saying, Trump's pushing immigration back toward an era of racial quotas. He consistently singles out certain nationalities as scapegoats, and the law gives him too much discretion to discriminate. And well, of course, with this, as well as really anything that I cover in these daily Philip DeFranco shows, I'd love to know your thoughts. I will say, one of the things that's been very interesting to watch is the reaction to this, which is very expanded as far as a travel ban, versus what was happening back in 2017. Because I think it shows how desensitized a lot of people are nowadays. The reaction now is pretty small considering how expansive this is. Whereas, back in 2017, everyone kind of lost their shit. So one of the things we end up seeing from that are different voices popping up. But even before this most recent expansion, you have people coming out like Republican Miami Congresswoman Maria Elvira Salazar saying that Trump's crackdown is un-American, saying Trump's new policy had amounted to collective punishment of the innocent for the sins of the guilty, saying this is unfair, un-American, and it goes against everything this country stands for. And then there's more we're going to dive into in a minute, but first let me say, it is still technically fall here, and it is stacked with football, basketball, hockey, concerts like the Jonas Brothers, Lorde, John Party, and more. It's all happening. And we've been giving out $500 every week for over a year thanks to our sponsor at SeatGeek, and somehow some of y'all still haven't entered for free, right? Which is crazy because it's been awesome seeing so many of you guys win the $500 SeatGeek weekly giveaway and use it to hit up concerts, games, Broadway shows, just y'all living your best lives. And if you haven't entered yet, it takes 2 seconds, and next week's $500 winner, it could be you. And for the uninitiated, SeatGeek is the #1 rated ticketing app with over 28 million downloads and tickets to over 70,000 events, sports, music, comedy, theater, you name it. So if you're a first timer, download the app, scan the QR code, or hit the link in the description and use code Phil for $20 off your first ticket purchase. And then, this is key, add code DeFranco to your SeatGeek account. That'll get you $10 off of any ticket and enters you for your chance to win the weekly $500 giveaway, no purchase required. And if you're a SeatGeek vet, right, you've used it before, that applies to you too. Just add code DeFranco to your account and you're entered. So hey, scan that QR code or click the link below and use code Phil and DeFranco and go make some memories. Right, but then, next up in the news, Candace and Erika think we're done. That is just one of the top comments I can read on this show following Candace Owens and Erika Kirk meeting, and then Candace Owens making a video to explain what was discussed. Right, along with other takes, like I've been watching your show for 3.5 years, and this is the first time I truly feel disappointed in you. As well as, I hate to say it, Candace, but you sound like a kid who just came out of the principal's office and is now casually shrugging and telling her friends outside it was no big deal. And so we'll need to dive into why, but where we should start is apparently the former Fox host Megyn Kelly, she was working behind the scenes to coordinate this meeting.
I really fully believe God's role for me here is to possibly play a role in getting this whole thing to a better place.
I do think that she has kept it very even. She has not been hysterical and it's demonic, it's evil, how dare Candace? And I appreciated that.
With Kelly also blasting critics who were upset with her for not condemning people like Owens and Tucker Carlson since the whole MAGA civil war broke out. Though with this, one, she made it clear that she doesn't believe the conspiracy theories about Kirk's assassination, and two, she just hates what she called petty internet people who want her and Owens to have a public catfight.
She and I actually have only gotten closer over the past couple of months as people try to make me attack her. So fuck off, okay? I have no obligation to you to hate the people you hate or try to bring down the people you want brought down.
Right, but then getting into the conversation itself, which supposedly lasted more than 4 hours, it appeared to go pretty well. You had both Owens and Kirk calling it very productive, Owens adding that they agreed much more than she expected and tensions were thawed. But then when Owens did her first podcast since the meeting yesterday, at times just a very different picture emerged.
I said one of the reasons why I really want to sit down is because I want to walk out of here and feel confident saying to my audience, hey, like, there's stuff going on behind the scenes, but Tyler Robinson shot Charlie Kirk. And at this point, they elected to call the lawyer. What I got from the lawyer did not make me feel that Tyler Robinson shot Charlie Kirk. He said that they have nothing but the affidavit. They will not know what investigators have discovered, this is what the lawyer told me, until May. The text messages that don't have a date, that don't even sound real, that's overwhelming. That to me feels really fake and gay. I don't believe that Tyler Robinson pulled the trigger.
So seemingly Candace undeterred with what she's believing, but also Tyler Robinson, he wasn't the only point that Owens refused to budge on, because she apparently still believes that people inside a Turning Point USA, though not necessarily Erika herself, had something to do with Kirk's assassination.
I still didn't feel good about the conversation that I had with Terrell, and I can't ignore my gut, and I don't trust Tyler Boyer, and that is never going to change. Similarly with Rob McCoy. He makes my skin crawl. I can't explain it. I look at him and he's a bad person and nobody can make me feel one way or the other about that. I believe that Charlie was betrayed by people that are close to him.
Also, Owens doubled down on her now infamous Egyptian planes theory, which is still a little vague on the details, but...
Because I'm certain that these Egyptian planes are incredibly shady and that they were in fact tracking Turning Point USA faith, broader events. Of course, Erika was at some of them. There is overwhelming evidence that these planes regularly fly in and out of Israel. And I'm going to present that evidence tomorrow. I say that strongly. We are dangerously close to something.
So that, it's where things stand now, though I'm very interested to see what happens next. Because if you just do a quick scroll through the comments on that video, Owens fans feel betrayed. Many furious this happened in private, it wasn't recorded or live streamed, saying things like huge letdown with this closed door meeting, telling your audience to trust you doesn't sit well with me since all you've been doing this whole time was demand transparency. And vibe is so off, just talking, no investigating, just bullshit and trying to gaslight us. Wow, I'm shocked. As well as Erika got what she wanted and all the hard work and credibility to get truth and justice for Charlie got shot, pun intended. Sad day, very sad day, disappointed. Wish Candace didn't take Erika's bait by doing this interview privately. Erika just wanted to see what cards Candace was holding over her and TPUSA's heads. And now this whole narrative becomes all hearsay. And well, at one point during her live stream, she was saying the negative reactions she was receiving before the full comments came in, they were likely bots. Again, the top comments were almost all like that. Just a ton of disappointment, anger, confusion, and suspicion.
But all around, definitely a productive conversation.
But then, as far as Erika, she's now turning her attention to America First, which is a TPUSA event that's featuring Trump officials and right-wing influencers. Which, if anything's real, or at least the people saying things believe those things, is going to be interesting because, one of the scheduled speakers is Tucker Carlson, who just said to Theo Von,
I don't understand the official story at all.
Of his assassination,
I don't understand it. Candace said that Egyptian registered aircraft were following Erika Kirk, Charlie's widow, around for a number of years in different places in the world. That's one of the weirdest things I've ever heard. And I just want to say that that is factually true. And it also, her claim that, there were kind of a disproportionately large number of foreign registered cell phones at the event. That's also true. So what does that add up to? I don't know.
So, it's going to be interesting to see how that event plays out. Also, it's going to be interesting to see how Candace reacts to her audience losing their shit on her. And then 3, I'll say, with as much infighting as we've seen on the right, it'll be interesting to see if anyone who's, really big into conspiracy theories tries to take some of Candace Owens' audience. Because there is this ever-growing narrative in some circles that Candace, quote-unquote, sold out to somebody. While it's not a true one-to-one and it's different, it's kind of like, it's similar to what you saw with Dan Bongino and others who really talked about the Epstein files and the conspiracy around that, all of a sudden changing what they were saying, right? In their audiences or supporters' reaction following that switch up. But hey, for now, let me know your thoughts, opinions, reactions, maybe even predictions as we wait to see how this plays out. But then, next up in the news, something quick but very, very big. 4 House Republicans have now broken ranks and joined Democrats to force a vote on extending the Affordable Care Act subsidies established during the pandemic. Right? Because Republicans refused to do anything about them during the shutdown, they're set to expire at the end of the year, and it's going to leave, at the very least, millions of Americans paying more for health insurance. Right? And House Speaker Mike Johnson, he's refused to to even have a vote on extending them, with them also shooting down Republican proposed alternatives. And so while House GOP leaders were planning to vote on Johnson's healthcare bill, Democrats, they circulated a discharge petition. And as many people have now learned, thanks to the Epstein file situation, that can force a vote over the House leadership's objections if the majority of representatives sign on. And today, with Pennsylvania Representatives Brian Fitzpatrick, Robert Bresnahan, and Ryan McKenzie, as well as Mike Lawler of New York, signing on, the petition tipped over the edge. With Lawler saying to me the clean 3-year extension is not ideal, but doing nothing is not an answer. And Fitzpatrick adding, things are very expensive right now. Healthcare is very expensive. Anything we can do to lower the cost, we ought to do. And so with all that, we could be seeing a vote on this as early as next month. But before you celebrate too much, the Senate, which agreed to vote on an extension as part of the deal to end the shutdown, they've already rejected it. Right? And they've also actually shot down a Republican plan to direct subsidies to individual accounts that could be used to pay for out-of-pocket healthcare costs. And so obviously we're gonna watch to see what happens from here, because it's literally going to change the lives of millions and millions of Americans. If we're talking about strategy, if we're talking about politics, politically, the damage may have already been done. Right? This move, it cracks open the next phase of the healthcare battle, one that Republican leaders have been desperately trying to avoid. All while another government funding deadline hits at the end of January, you got the midterm elections looming. You know what happens with healthcare, there's gonna be a big spotlight on it, along with affordability. It is a central political fight, and at this time, it looks like House leadership no longer fully controls the floor. And then we're going to keep breaking down the news today, but first, let me take a minute to say, you ever get blindsided by a data breach from a company that you never heard of? Because, well, at least 35,000 people have after Verissure's third-party billing partner leaked names, emails, addresses, and even social security numbers. I mean, your info, it can sit on some random vendor's server that you'd never touched, and you're the one dealing with the fallout. And that's exactly why today's sponsor, Incogni, exists. Incogni, they go after data brokers and demand that they delete your information, the stuff that scammers use for phishing, identity theft, and those creepy targeted ads. And with Incogni's custom removal feature on the Unlimited and Family Unlimited plans, you can point to sketchy sites showing your data, and their privacy team handles it. These companies, they store everything: addresses, relatives, job history, spending habits, all things that bad actors love to weaponize. And breaches like Verisure, they prove it. Even one unremoved profile, it's a risk. And, watching those data deletions roll in, it's weirdly satisfying. And I'll say it's work I definitely don't have the hours or patience to do manually. Right? And the longer that you're online, the more your data piles up, and doing this manually, it could take years. Incogni, they automate it. So if you want your info off the market, now's the time. Just scan that QR code or go to incogni.com/DeFranco and use code DeFranco for 60% off. That's incogni.com/DeFranco, code DeFranco, because scammers can't steal what's not there. But then, next up today, this is crazy. Trump is in big trouble. Like some would say bigger than the Epstein files trouble, because Americans are losing confidence in Donald Trump's handling of the economy fast. And it's ugly. According to the latest polling, just 36% of Americans approve of how Trump's managing the economy. And then here's the part that Trump really should be worried about. Americans haven't been this negative on the economy since 2022, when of course Joe Biden was president. And back then, Republicans had a 16-point advantage on which party voters trusted more with the economy. But now, that advantage has evaporated. Democrats lead by 4 points. And this shift, it's not some abstract thing, it's very personal. Right? 70% of Americans now say the cost of living in the area where they live is not affordable, up from 45% just 6 months ago. 35% say that their personal finances have gotten worse over the past year, and the number of people who think things are going to improve next year, it's collapsed, falling from 48% to 33%. And while Trump's out there saying that affordability is actually Democrat hoax, you have people not feeling just squeezed, but feeling stuck. While optimism, it does still exist out there, it is increasingly segmented. Right? Republicans, white evangelical Christians, rural voters, and whites without college degrees, especially white men, they're more likely to believe things are going to improve by 2026. But Democrats, independents, Latinos, and college-educated white women, they're just not buying it. And again, this pessimism, it's not coming out of nowhere. Just this week, the federal government released 2 major economic reports, which were delayed by the shutdown. And while they don't prove a recession, they raise some serious red flags. Retail sales, which account for roughly 2/3 of the US economy, were basically flat from September to October. And of course, that's a time where spending usually ramps up ahead of the holidays. And then, there's the jobs. Last week, the Federal Reserve cut interest rates, citing concerns about the labor market. Hell, Fed Chair Jerome Powell even warned that federal data may be overestimating job creation by as much as 60,000 jobs per month. And so keep that in mind when I tell you that the US reportedly lost 105,000 jobs in October and only added 64,000 jobs in November. Meanwhile, unemployment, it's reached the highest level in 4 years, and while it is still historically low, it's been enough that economists are starting to worry. Right? You're the head of economic research at Indeed telling ABC News that while the data needs to be taken with caution, it paints a sobering picture of a job market that may be turning frigid after a prolonged cooling period. Right? And so then, as far as how the White House has been responding, they've been responding with optimism, loud, optimism, right? Posting the best is yet to come, sharing claims like deportations deliver jobs, facts, pointing to data showing 2 million jobs this year went to US-born workers. But economists, you have them saying that the numbers don't prove that Americans are filling jobs left by immigrants, and it doesn't explain why people still feel underwater. And honestly, I mean, the White House's biggest problem here, it might be Trump himself. Right? Trump, he's repeatedly called the affordability crisis a hoax, a con job, and a Democratic scam. Yet last night in Pennsylvania, you had Vice President J.D. Vance standing in front of a sign reading lower prices, bigger paychecks, and saying,
I promise you, there is no person more impatient to solve the affordability crisis than Donald J. Trump, the President of the United States.
Right, and so anyone with a functioning brain's asking, okay, well, which is it? Is it a hoax or is it a real thing that's happening and Donald Trump cares and is fixing it? And well, Vance, you had him trying to kind of split the difference, saying that progress, it takes time, that Rome wasn't built in a day, while then also agreeing with Trump's assessment that the economy deserves an A++++. And it appears that to make this contradiction work, the administration is trying to lean into two strategies. First, blame Biden, that sleepy Joe son of a bitch, Trump mentioning Biden 30 times in a single affordability speech last week. And you had Vance echoing that line again yesterday.
Joe Biden gave us the worst economy in the world that we forget it. No, we know. We know exactly what we were left with. We know exactly the consequences that it's caused for so many of our great families all across Pennsylvania.
And then second, they're asking voters to wait, right? Vance promised that middle-class Americans will be rewarded in 2026 once Trump's tax cuts and deregulation, it fully kicks in.
You are going to have, and if this doesn't turn out to be true, I'll come back here and you can all tell me I'm wrong, but I'm telling you it's going to be true. You are going to have middle-class Americans, middle-class Pennsylvanians, some of the best tax season in 2026 that you've ever had.
He even invited voters to hold him accountable if it doesn't happen, but critics, they warn that those benefits, they're likely to flow upward, not outward. And that concern, it's not coming out of nowhere. It's backed by new data showing that while everyday Americans are very anxious, executives and investors, they're more confident in the economy than they've been in 4 years. Right? And that's a big thing that I've tried to explain to any of my rich friends, that there are people living in different realities in the United States right now. Right? The wealthiest, they're doing great, they're spending great. Those regular folks, they're tightening their belt, right? You've got Americans, and more importantly for next year, you have voters uneasy, though the markets are calm. And you have the White House saying that everything's great, but also it's not their fault if things are not great. And so with these off-cycle elections already swinging to the left and the midterms less than a year away, the big question is whether voters decide, hey, we're gonna keep waiting or we're gonna send a message. But that right there, it brings us all to the end of today's show. Granted, you've got more just a click away, or you've got today's brand new Crashing Out episode with myself and Alex Perlman. And while it's called Crashing Out, it is very actually cathartic. And or you could watch last night's DeFranco show. Definitely watch that if you haven't seen it already. But whatever you do, let me just say thank you for watching. I love yo faces, and I'll see you right back here tomorrow.